There are moments when the world grows still, when the noise fades and all that's left is a quiet ache you can't explain. You tell yourself it's nothing, just fatigue, just stress, just another day. But somewhere deep beneath the surface, something ancient is stirring. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What he meant is that what we ignore never disappears. It waits for silence, for those unguarded hours of the night, to whisper the truths we've tried so hard to forget. Emotions are not your enemies. They are not weakness. They are the language of your hidden self, the messenger of the soul. When you feel anger, it is not merely rage. It is a boundary crossed. When you feel sadness, it is not fragility. It is love that has nowhere left to go. When you feel fear, it is not cowardice. It is your soul asking if you are still safe, still whole. But we live in an age that glorifies detachment, an age that tells you to move on, stay positive, rise above. So we silence the storm, we swallow the grief, the resentment, the guilt. We wear masks of strength and call it peace. Yet beneath those masks, something begins to fracture. The more you suppress, the more the shadow grows. And the shadow, that forgotten half of who you are, will find a way to speak. Sometimes through dreams, sometimes through sudden rage, sometimes through the quiet despair that seeps in, even when life looks perfect. It's not here to punish you, it's here to remind you, you are not whole yet. To feel deeply is not a curse, it's an invitation. Every emotion you reject becomes a part of you that longs to return home. And until you turn inward, until you stop fighting the ache and start listening to it, you will never hear what it's trying to say. Your emotions aren't weakness, they're warnings, the soul's way of telling you that something sacred within you is being ignored. And so, the journey begins. Not by fixing what's broken, but by understanding why it hurts. Because in the language of the soul, pain is not the enemy. Pain is the beginning of awareness. We are taught to chase light, to smile, to overcome, to rise above. But few ever speak of the cost of that chase, the quiet burial of everything we couldn't bear to feel. You see, the modern world worships control. It tells you to manage your emotions, not to meet them, to stay productive, even when your soul is crying for pause. We learn to hide our trembling behind achievement, our sadness behind a well-lit screen. We scroll through curated happiness while silently drowning in comparison. We wear masks of composure until the mask becomes our face. And beneath that, something inside us suffocates. We call it being strong. But strength without honesty is only repression wearing armor. You can't outthink what's emotional. You can't outwork what's wounded. And you can't meditate away what you refuse to feel. In Jung's language, this is how the shadow is born. The unseen container of everything you've rejected in yourself. Your envy, your rage, your insecurity, all of it exiled to the basement of the psyche, while the polished self stands proudly in the light, pretending to be pure. But light that denies its shadow blinds itself, and the more you deny, the more violently it demands to be seen. You felt it, that sudden, unexplainable anger at someone you love, that wave of jealousy you condemn yourself for, that anxiety that creeps in when life is fine. They are not random storms. They are signals, your unconscious trying to balance the lie of your perfection. We repress because it's easier than understanding. We distract because silence feels dangerous. But each unspoken feeling piles like ash upon the heart. And one day, it ignites. There's a strange irony here. The more we run from our pain, the more it defines us. The man who denies his anger becomes controlled by it. The woman who buries her sadness becomes numb to joy. The child who learns to please everyone forgets who he ever was. This is the tragedy of false positivity. It smiles to survive, but never truly heals. We say, "I'm fine," but the body remembers what the mind denies. The tremor in your voice, the tightness in your chest. They're the whispers of truth trying to break through the performance. So what happens when you stop running? When you no longer call sadness weakness? When you finally ask, what if this pain is not here to harm me, but to teach me? That is where the door begins to open. Because behind every suppressed emotion lies a forgotten truth. And when you listen closely, you'll hear that truth calling you by name. The struggle, then, isn't against pain. It's against your refusal to feel it. And once that veil begins to tear, what's revealed is not weakness, but truth. The question is, can you bear to see what the shadow has been trying to show you all along? Carl Jung believed that the path to wholeness does not lie in the light alone, but in the marriage between light and darkness. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The revelation is this: your darkness is not the opposite of your light, it is the source of it. Every emotion you've ever buried was never meant to be destroyed. It was meant to be understood. Because the shadow, that hidden part of you, is not your enemy. It's your unacknowledged ally, holding every emotion, desire, and truth that your conscious self was too afraid to accept. The shadow is the part of you that remembers. It remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. It remembers the rage you weren't allowed to express, the tears you were told to swallow, the parts of you that learned love must be earned, and it holds them, patiently, silently, waiting for the day you have the courage to look. When you face it, something extraordinary happens. The emotion that once ruled you begins to reveal its meaning. Anger transforms into a boundary long ignored. Fear becomes a signal of where you still seek safety. Envy points towards the unlived potential within you. Even guilt becomes a teacher, showing you where your integrity wants to grow. To feel deeply is to speak the language of the unconscious. Your emotions are the compass, not the storm. They guide you toward the truth of who you are, if you dare to listen without judgment. But this listening is not easy. It means sitting with discomfort until it turns into clarity. It means watching the false self dissolve, the version of you that existed only to please, to perform, to be seen as good. And when that version crumbles, you meet the truth, raw, unfiltered, and humbling. You realize that what you called broken was never broken at all. It was simply buried beneath the expectations of the world. The shadow is not darkness for the sake of darkness. It's the womb of transformation. Just as a seed must split before it grows, so must the self fracture before it becomes whole. The ancient mystics knew this long before psychology had a name for it. They called it the night of the soul, a passage through darkness where the ego dies and something greater is born. You begin to see that pain has purpose, that emotions are not obstacles to transcend, but invitations to awaken. You understand that healing is not about erasing your wounds. It's about illuminating them until they lose their power to control you. When Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, he meant the courage to stand between opposites, to hold both joy and sorrow, strength and tenderness, pride and shame, without trying to choose one over the other. Because wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is inclusion. And in that moment of seeing, when you no longer hide from what you feel, the light no longer battles the dark. It learns from it, it listens, it forgives. You begin to see the face of your shadow, and realize it looks a lot like you. That is the revelation, that your emotions were never there to break you. They were there to bring you back, to the self you lost in the pursuit of being fine. The pain was never punishment. It was guidance, and the warning was never about danger. It was about awakening. Now comes the quiet work, not the dramatic confrontation, but the daily practice of seeing and staying. Because once you've glimpsed the shadow, you can no longer unsee it, but you can learn to walk with it, to listen, to integrate, to transform. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the person you were before you started hiding. Before you split yourself into the acceptable and the ashamed, before you learned that love depended on silence. The integration of the shadow is an act of radical honesty. It means saying, yes, I am capable of cruelty and of compassion. I am capable of envy and of admiration. I have lied and I am still worthy of truth. To integrate is to hold both sides without collapsing into either. It is to meet your own contradictions and find that they do not cancel each other out. They complete you. Jung once said that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. That means every ascent begins with descent, into the uncomfortable, the unspoken, the unhealed. So what does this look like in the real world? It looks like pausing before reacting and asking, what is this emotion trying to protect? It looks like owning your anger without unleashing it on others. It looks like apologizing without self-condemnation. It looks like letting someone love you without editing yourself into who you think they want. Integration requires humility. The humility to know that you are both the wound and the healer, and that growth will not make you invincible, but more human. In relationships, this awareness becomes compassion. You stop expecting others to save you from the parts of yourself you've avoided. You stop projecting your pain onto those who trigger it. You begin to see that every conflict is a mirror, not to punish, but to show you where you're still divided. In solitude, it becomes silence, a stillness where emotions are no longer enemies, but teachers. You no longer rush to fix the ache. You sit with it, and in that sitting, it begins to soften, because it has finally been seen. Leadership too changes under this awareness. You no longer lead from perfection, but from presence, from the understanding that to guide others, you must first know the landscape of your own darkness. You must have walked through your own confusion to speak with the calm of wisdom. And so, you stop fearing your emotions. You stop fearing the trembling in your chest or the heat in your voice, because now you know these are not breakdowns, they're break-ins, the unconscious knocking on the door of awareness. Integration is not a one-time revelation, it's a rhythm, a daily dialogue with the unseen. Some days the shadow whispers, other days it shouts, but always it's calling you toward the truth, that peace is not the absence of emotion, but the harmony of them. The transformation, then, is learning to love your humanness, to look at every emotion and say, you belong. When you stop fighting what you feel, you stop fracturing who you are, and what was once chaos becomes coherence. You no longer fear the night, because you have learned how to carry your own light. There comes a point when the storm no longer frightens you, when you stop asking, when will this end, and start whispering, what is this trying to show me? That's the moment the work becomes wisdom. Because healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about learning to walk through it with open eyes. It's the quiet realization that peace was never waiting at the end of your struggle. It was waiting inside the struggle, beneath the noise of resistance. Carl Jung Philosophy teaches us that the goal of life is not happiness, but wholeness. And wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means acceptance of every broken, brilliant, flawed, beautiful part of yourself. When you make peace with your shadow, you stop seeing emotions as intruders. You see them as informants, each one carrying a message from the deeper self. Anger says, protect what matters. Grief says, something sacred has passed. Fear says, be careful, but don't stop living. And love says nothing at all. It simply reminds you that despite everything, you are still capable of feeling. This is not weakness, it's the greatest strength you'll ever know. The courage to stay open when life invites you to close. Because when you numb your pain, you also numb your joy. When you bury your anger, you bury your passion. And when you silence your emotions, you silence your soul. The truth is, your emotions were never the enemy. They were the map, each one pointing towards something you needed to reclaim. The shadow was never darkness. It was light seen from the other side. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. To walk through your inner chaos and find within it the pattern of truth. To face your own contradictions and see in them the vastness of being human. So when pain returns, as it always will, do not turn away. Sit with it. Listen. Let it speak its ancient language of truth. Because every emotion, every ache, every trembling moment of uncertainty is life itself, asking you to wake up. And when you finally do, when you no longer fear what you feel, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing peace, and peace begins to follow you. You stop running from the darkness, and the darkness begins to glow. You stop hiding from your emotions and realize they were never there to hurt you. They were there to guide you home. So breathe, feel, and remember. Your emotions aren't weakness. They are warnings, whispers from the soul, reminding you that even in your most fragile moments, you are still whole. And the light you've been seeking has always been within.